Hello, this is Lights126 Reloaded. Star Wars. For at least three generations, it has entertained the masses. It caught the world back in 1977. How is it today? It still functions. It hasn't retired yet. Corporations would never want to leave properties like this alone. It's sad, but it is just the truth. Star Wars is not dead. To be honest, Star Wars is no longer in its apex years. People still to this day believe that the original trilogy should be the only Star Wars to exist. I cannot blame them, but however, to me, the prequels are very complementary to the original trilogy and are decent Star Wars. It's just not executed well as movies, but as Star Wars, those movies did a lot. But in Disney's possession, Star Wars is being mass produced in such a way that is so far off on how George Lucas handled Star Wars. Think of it like this: you had 1983, then The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, 15 to 16 years depending on when it was released. Then there was another gap: Revenge of the Sith in 2005 and The Force Awakens in 2015. 10 years. That could be considered a gap if you ignore the Clone Wars movie and the Clone Wars series. The entirety of the Clone Wars before the acquisition of Disney was the only thing of Star Wars after the prequels. That was the only major thing of Star Wars going on at that time. There wasn't so many different things happening with Star Wars. If you ignore any games, what else was there? With Disney, you have 5 movies, over half a dozen Star Wars shows. I'm not completely sure, but I think Disney has made more Star Wars than George Lucas himself. Shoot, I think if you was to measure how much you have seen of Ahsoka compared to Luke, Ahsoka would beat Luke for how much you've seen of her compared to the main character of the original trilogy. It's kind of crazy, but I think Ahsoka has the most screen time of any Star Wars character, probably even more than Anakin Skywalker. It's crazy how much Star Wars has changed, because if I say evolve, people might get mad, so I'm just going to say change. Over the years, that saying Ahsoka has more screen time than Anakin and Luke is not crazy. It goes to show you that Star Wars is not like it used to be. Now, if you just look at the first 6, then Ahsoka would not be present. But for the 15 years since her debut back in 2008, Ahsoka has had a major place in this franchise. And it pretty much has eclipsed Luke of how much she was relevant to a lot of things. Now, that doesn't really bother me. The issue is how Disney wind up messing with the movies of what George Lucas has made. The Kenobi series is probably the worst offender when it comes to messing with George Lucas' established lore. It beats The Rise of Skywalker and A Milestone. There's a difference between messing with the impact of an ending and tweaking what has come before the beginning of Star Wars. Obi-Wan, we meet again at last. We once fought, I was but a learner. Now I am the master. I don't know about you, but Obi-Wan seeing his fallen student for the first time being consumed by fire is much more impactful than when they meet on some planet, some dark planet, and Obi-Wan already knowing how Darth Vader is operating, and he already understands that Anakin has fallen, and when he leaves, it's just less climactic, less impactful than him leaving him on Mustafar. It's just not as good. Far from it. Because Disney is handling this content like it's a roller coaster ride. Do not put so much thought into it. It's a roller coaster ride. But if they really put some thought into it, they could have handled Obi-Wan in a series where he learned more about himself as a Jedi who failed. So on his time on Tatooine, he could have learned to forgive himself and to heal the past and heal the scars and heal the trauma. See, Obi-Wan earned a slower show. He earned it. But you giving a slower show to something like Andor? What on earth is going on? Andor is good for all of its merit, but it didn't need to be 12 episodes long. Let me be honest with you all. Only 3% of Andor was actually great. The execution of that show is very impressive, but when it comes down to understanding what Star Wars is about adventure. It's about the conflict. It's about the wonder. Andor does not do that like that. It handles itself as mature. But what it does is take away a lot from the adventure aspect. That's why people kind of shun the prequels. Even though the prequels is more advanced and more adventurous than Andor. Please think before just keep praising something like Andor and then you want to scrap the prequels. The execution by dialogue isn't the only thing, but it is more adventurous. And let me say this, that when looking at Andor, I could not wait to see The Mandalorian, because The Mandalorian is more fun than Andor. And in spite of Andor's merit, I would rather see the season 3 of The Mandalorian before I just fully watch Andor in its entirety again. I wish the Star Wars shows had the merit like Andor, but not the pacing. I seen the Bad Batch and I seen the episodes with Crosshair. You don't have to do it so slow. Star Wars is not that property to be doing that with. People are praising it for its merit, but Star Wars is about the adventure. It must be faster. It's not just a drama. How was episode 5 handled with Yoda and Luke? It was done pretty good. It didn't have to just be only that. There was a lot of mystique to it, making it interesting. Where was that? Where was that in Andor? The problem with season 3 of The Mandalorian is that it should have just been an exploration trying to take back Mandalore. It seemed like the roadmap was not made properly, just like the sequels. The problem of the book of Boba Fett is that you're taking away the mysteriousness of the character. Boba Fett didn't have to have a complex ideal. It would have been interesting to just see him do his job as a bounty hunter, but you would be basically doing what the Mandalorian was doing. But if you at least stay true to his character and him doing what he is known for, taking bounties, it should work, because at least he don't have a green character that must rely on him. He can truly be a lone wolf, but that is not what happened. That's all I have to say for the moment. To all are one.